The Northwest Law and Mental Health Conference brings together expert speakers with legal, clinical, and lived experience to discuss the impact of the law on people with mental illness and addiction. Our spring 2020 conference was postponed due to COVID-19, so presenters recorded their sessions, which are now embedded in the conference website along with their collateral information. Thanks to all our expert presenters, generous sponsors, exhibitors, volunteers, and the planning committee for the Northwest Law and Mental Health Conference. Stay well, and we hope to see you in 2021. So I'm here today with Ivanova Smith of the University of Washington, and she's an advocate for persons with intellectual capacity disabilities, and she's going to tell us about her experience, her life, and her family. Ivanova, welcome, and thank you for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me, and I really appreciate it. So I'm going to share my screen with you all. All right, so I'm Ivanova Smith, and this is my daughter, Alexandra, that you see in the picture. And she is a happy little 2-year-old. She was 1 year old in this picture. But today I'm going to talk about true inclusion and parenting. And throughout this presentation, you may hear my daughter speaking. And so that's just her enjoying the movie she gets to watch right now. So I hope that that's okay with everyone. But really, I want to talk about practices that are good for supporting us and being allowed to be parents, and also my experiences in my parenting journey. I was born in Soviet-occupied Latvia in 1988, and I lived in an institutional orphanage for the first 5 years of my life. I was nonverbal when I was first adopted, and so there was a lot of things, a lot of low expectations that I had to deal with. All right, let's get to the next slide. Okay, for some reason it's not, there we go. So one thing that's really important with disabled parenting and supporting us in being parents is our early years and having good quality education. For many people and students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, we're not given education on our bodies and our reproductive abilities. A lot of times we're not given education on sex, and this has been very harmful to the intellectual and developmental disability community. There is this theory that people believe called mental age theory, and they believe that people with intellectual disabilities especially, that we can't become adults, that we are mentally children forever. And this is not true. And one thing I think really helped me in securing my parental rights is the fact that my parents did not believe in this theory. They gave me education about sex. They told me about how babies are born. And they told me when I was a teenager. They told me when it was appropriate to tell me. They told me what, the bleeding out of my body meant. And so that was really good for me to know and learn about, because it helped me protect myself and not get into risky situations. And so I think that we really need to throw this mental age theory aside, and we need to say that we need to give people with intellectual and developmental disabilities the same sex education we would give any other teenager that's experiencing issues with puberty. Because we all need to know why our bodies are changing, and we can make more informed decisions on when we want to start a family and when we want to get into those activities. Better, we can make more safer decisions if we have education on it. And for many people in the self-contained classrooms, which are restricted classrooms for students that have intellectual disabilities, they they really don't give sex ed, and that's a real problem. And so education is a really important piece. I'm very grateful to my mother for giving me that education right away. And so I could know how to protect myself. And also I knew what it meant, what were the things that could happen by doing sexual activities. And also, it helped me make an informed decision. And I made the decision to wait until marriage. And I got married in 2014 um, in January. And, we really need to encourage people to make adult decisions and encourage safe actions and called dignity of risk. So, I took the risk of, you know, dating and getting married. I took the risk of moving out of my house. There's a lot of risks involved. I, could have gotten hurt or I could have gotten in trouble. But, those risks happen. And even after we were married, there were a lot of things that, we were not planning for. So, Alexandra, she was unexpected. We were married for 3 years, and I was very scared about having a family. I was actually really scared about being a parent. I thought, oh, I probably wouldn't do so well because of my disabilities. But every time you do those sexual activities, you take that risk of, you're going to have a bump, and so, there's ways that you can help people support themselves and protect themselves. And there's ways that you can help people be prepared for when that time comes that that bump happens. And so I kind of use this picture here. It's kind of like, going out in a rainy day, even when it's rainy, you still got to go do things out in society. You still got to go to the store or do your other freedoms. And so, yeah, it's going to be scary. It's going to be hard. But taking those risks and having people around you that are supportive and, see you as an autonomous human being is what really matters. Because if you have the support around you, then you're less likely to get in trouble, and you can get more support with your child. And so I am very much pro-life, that I think that every person with IDD should be, they should not be scared about having children. They should be able to be excited, just like anybody would be excited about having a child. Um, but when we first got married, I was really scared about having a kid. I was really terrified, but things happen. And how to prepare for a new life, like any parent, you're never expecting it, that how much of a blessing it is. There's a lot of scary things that happen. Your body changes. Um, there's certain foods and liquids and drinks you can't have anymore. There's like things you have to change about your own behaviors, because, there's another little life inside of you. And so, there's a lot of sensory issues that could come about with this new transition. And so, like if you are a if you're the person that's pregnant, or you're the partner of a person who's pregnant, being really supportive and helping them with all of the changes and being a listening ear for all the frustrations. So like, I hated the fact that I had a lot of heartburn when I was pregnant. And there were a lot of sensory issues, like the way that my clothes didn't feel right anymore. Like I wear very masculine clothing, and when you're pregnant, you can't tuck your shirts in really. It's a very uncomfortable and awkward to tuck in your shirts. And so I had to have my shirts untucked. And for me, as an autistic person, that's really hard. So, there are sensory issues, but, feeling that little snuggle kick in me was really cool. And it's definitely worth it to have that experience. But it can be scary, and there can be medical things that go on, and just we really need to help the medical community be more comfortable working with patients that have intellectual disabilities. I'm very grateful for the doctors that I met with and the nurses who were supportive, who, they got me into maternity support services, and they got me some emotional support because I was like very emotional during my pregnancy. And so if you find the right doctor and nurses, they can be very supportive. And I think one thing that helps is just always just be honest that you want help and that you need help, but you want to be able to keep your baby. Just be very, self-advocacy is really important when you first get pregnant, because there are some times where they'll try to discourage you to not continue. And I actually there were some nurses that wanted to do that with me when I first went in to verify my pregnancy tests. They were wanting to give me paperwork about abortion, and I was like, no, sure, no, ma'am, no, thank you, I don't want none of that. And I self-advocated really hard, and I said, no, I don't want any information about that. Please don't even give me those papers. I don't even want to see that. This is a little life inside of me. I'm going to do whatever I can to protect it and keep it alive. And so I was very passionate about that, and I didn't let anyone push that stuff on me. And so, but other people, it may be harder to self-advocate like that and be very verbal. But just know that nobody should pressure you into doing something like that. And that it can be a real blessing. It was very scary at first when I first found out, but when I did my first ultrasound and I saw this little peanut inside of me, everything changed. I was like, okay, maybe I can get excited about this. Like, this is gonna be cool. There's a little human being inside of me. And so just making sure you tell all your natural supports right away too, that we have an unexpected little bundle. Oh, we have an expected little bundle. And making sure they're on board. So, I called my parents right away, and Ian, my husband, he called his parents right away, and they were really excited. And but sometimes family are not excited, and that's hard. And one thing I would suggest for people that are in that situation is find the natural supports, like your close friends, people you go to religious services with, people you spend, maybe coworkers that could be a natural support like that and help you during your pregnancy. So there are other people that can be a natural support other than just the grandparents. But for me, it was the grandparents that really came in. And also I had a lot of coworkers and friends of my advocacy work that were really supportive as well. And so I had a lot of natural supports around me. And they helped me get involved in a lot of different agencies that gave resources. So I got free pregnancy preparation classes from CareNet, and they also did parenting classes. And I also got a person-centered plan done. So this is a picture of my person-centered plan, and I did this with the PAVE office, which is a parent organization that does advocacy around parents with IDD. I mean, parents that have children with IDD. Originally, they were for supporting parents that have children with IDD, but they now expanded, and I was one of the first clientele for this, and they expanded to supporting parents with IDD as well. And IDD stands for intellectual and developmental disabilities. That's just a shorthand for it. But you know, my person-centered plan was it was really useful because it helped organize and made like a checklist of all the things I needed to get done before Alexandra was born. And you know, it set a goal. So like it had like things that I dreamed about, things that were a nightmare, people that could help me with different things, and I would check in with them and get help. There was also goals for Ian and I for, you know, our housing situation, and we were actually able to complete a lot of this person-centered plan. And I don't think that we would have been able to get it done without it. So I highly recommend, you know, if you find out you're pregnant and you have access to person-centered planning, to get a person-centered plan done with you and your loved ones and your natural supports, to talk about goals and what you want to do, and figure out, you know, your plan for this new life, and um, access to resources. And so, you know, and you know, that has visuals in it, and a lot of people can get person-centered plan through their waivers for DDA. Mine, people donated it to me because I do not have access to the waivers, but there are many people that do have access to the waivers that would really benefit from person-centered planning. And this is also really useful for other type of life goal type things. You know, if you have a life goal, doing a person-centered plan about it with your friend, with your supports, is a great idea to get those goals accomplished. And so I always recommend person-centered planning. Birth and recovery. So this was an adventure, and I was very scared about the birth and recovery and the delivery because I had heard the horror stories of parents with intellectual disabilities having their baby taken out of the delivery room from CPS. And so the way that I combated that was I had all my when I found out that my water broke, this little snuggle wanted to come out early. uh, uh, they I called my family, and Ian called his family, and he even called the pastor to let him know that I was on the way to the that I was in the hospital, and I was going to be delivering a little snuggle, the little peanut Alexandra. And so, you know, I allowed all my friends to come and visit me. And I think that sent the message to the medical professionals there that, you know, we're gonna, if we try to take this baby, there's gonna be a big army of people fighting us. So, you know, I had this is a picture of my husband was there the whole time with me. He took work off immediately when my water broke. He called his job and said, I am staying with my wife. She is in labor. Uh, you know, I will not be at work tomorrow. And they they were preparing for it because he had let them know that I was in labor. But he stayed with me, and so did my family. My family came over, was there the majority of the time, and they were there even during the birth. I also had a supportive doctor. So the doctor who delivered my daughter was the doctor that I was meeting with for all my pregnancy appointments. And so, he knew my story. He knew who I was. He had a personal relationship with me. And so that was something that really helped me. And it's something I encourage people to develop a really good relationship, try to develop a good relationship with your doctor and get your doctor on board. Because if your doctor's on board, they will help you if there's people that have, that are trying to cause distress. Um, and I think a lot of the cases happen because they don't have there's not a good access to pregnancy care before the birth, and we need to get better people better more frequently meeting with the doctor so that the doctor can see who that person is and build that relationships. I think I was very always honest with my doctor. I told him about all the things I was putting in my body, and uh, he was very he was supportive, and he also was like he always wanted my husband to be there at the appointments, and so when you go to your doctor's appointments, try to have your natural supports come with you to those appointments. That's what I would always suggest to people is bring your natural supports to any appointments, when you're going into labor, make sure there are people around you that will be around to help you with the baby. And I'm very blessed that I was able to have that myself. So there's a lot of joys in parenting, and I'm going to show this video of my parenting that kind of goes into more detail of my parenting, how I got parenting supports from PAVE, and just a little bit more about my story. I was born in 1988 in Soviet-occupied Latvia. I lived there for 5.5 years in an institutional orphanage. I was premature by a month and a half. In the orphanage, we got really little to eat, and I was nonverbal. They took care of all physical needs, but they didn't, cuddle us or tell us how much they loved us. Like, I didn't celebrate any birthdays. There were no holidays. All my documents don't have my real parents' names on them. So I don't even know their names. I was adopted by an American family called their names are the Andersons. They raised me in a Christian home, and it was a loving home. I experienced a lot of love, and I experienced a lot of things that I did not get to experience in an orphanage. And And so when I was adopted, I was exposed to a lot of new things. My parents, they had to figure out how to help me learn about this new world. Like, my mom had to teach me how to hold a hamburger because I never had food that I could just hold like that. It wasn't in the orphanage. They just gave us watery soup. So having a hamburger for the first time was a new experience, and I had to be taught how to play. My sister, who met me at the airport in America, she tried giving me a stuffed bear, a stuffed animal, my first toy, and I didn't know what to do with it because I just held it and it was like, oh, that's nice, and then I just gave it back to her. I didn't understand that she was giving me something. When I went to school, it was a real challenge because I didn't like going to school. The school had a hard time with me because they thought that I couldn't learn how to read. And my mom had to teach me how to read herself. By the time I got to 4th grade, I was able to read. And I think that really helped me in a lot of my barriers to academic access, was because my mom was finally able to crack the code. And it was not until I finally accepted my disability and accepted that I had to do things different way that I realized that it was okay that I could be successful even with a disability. I later was able to go to college, and it's all really because my family had really high expectations for me. They didn't let me excuse my disability because they didn't want me to be treated differently and be treated with discrimination. And I have many friends with IDD, intellectual and developmental disabilities, that have been discriminated against and been institutionalized, been abused in the workplace. And that's why I do disability rights activism now, is I really want all people with IDD to have access to this world and to this community. I am the president of the Pierce County People First chapter, and People First of Washington is a statewide organization that does community engagement with people with disabilities, and PAVE office has been really generous in allowing us to use this space for our meetings. They've always helped our chapter be able to use their resource fairs and be part of the Tools for Success conference. Like, they've been really welcoming our chapter and helping us recruit in that way. And so we've just been really thankful that PAVE has been so supportive of our People First chapter as well. I got married in 2014, right after I graduated university, and then 3 years into our marriage, I have a little, I get a bump. There are a lot of cases of women with intellectual and developmental disabilities having their babies taken away from them in the delivery room. And so I really wanted to be prepared and create some protections in place so that wouldn't happen to me. And some PAVE, they gave me supports and advice and things I needed to know to prepare for my little one. I'm really glad to work with PAVE to help more disabled parents get the support they need, and I think that PAVE is a great place that they can go to get those supports like I did. And also I want to keep advocating at the legislative level on why parents with disabilities deserve to keep their children. My hopes and dreams for the future is that the policy issues that self-advocates are fighting for today, that they're able to get changed in the way that we want, that
workers with disabilities be paid an equal wage, and that all of our people would be free from institutions. And I hope to be able to run for office someday. That is one of my goals, is to run for the legislature and become one of the first IDD legislatures. The disability, it won't limit me, and you don't need to be scared of disability, and that I can still live a successful life even with my disability.
Ivanova, that's a very interesting video. Tell us about how that got made.
So that was made with the PAVE office. They developed that video for the fundraising, and they've developed it with me because I've been partnering with them with my Pierce County People First chapter, and they're the ones that hosted the meeting for my person-centered plan. And so I was very grateful to them, and so I was happy to help them make a video. And they said, we really want to share your life story, and you can use this video for anything that you want. And so I was like, I told them, I talked about my story, and I talked about my journey and being a parent, and helped the PAVE office. They really, they had I got to be part of the parent to parent program, where they coached me through my pregnancy, and coached me through after Alexandra was born. The person I worked with the most there was Doreen Vandervoort, and she even came to my house after, a couple of days after Alexandra was born, and it was really uh, uh, it was really a really helpful experience. And there were times, I would just go in and cry. She was kind of like a counselor to me too. So I was just really grateful for the services they provided me.
Could uh, you talk? I saw in your action plan you had some fears,
Yes,
and
I did have fears.
I thought that plan was remarkable and beautiful, and from what I can tell about you, very accurate. And so, what a wonderful thing to have to guide you. But tell me a little bit about why you and people like you would be afraid of having a child. There's a
Well,
history here that we need to know
yeah, so
about.
there's a long eugenics history of people with intellectual disabilities not being seen as being allowed to have children. The whole mental age theory is a big part of that, and the
Tell me
belief.
about that too. Tell me about
Yeah,
that.
so mental age theory, you will hear a lot in like the newscast, like just this person with IDD is missing, and they have the mental age of a 5-year-old.
Right.
That's the uh, constant way that it's used. It's also used by medical professionals, and they say this to parents that their child got a diagnosis of an intellectual disability. And it's a real problem because it doesn't help the parents realize that their kid could grow up, and their kid will grow up naturally. Everyone grows up. Everyone that gets over the age of 14 experiences puberty, and yet we lack education. We're told we're not allowed to get the education. Only a few of us are allowed to get the education. And so like now they've said, okay, the higher functioning folks, they can get an education, but not the low functioning. And that to me is discriminatory. All means all, and we all need to be given that education. And by not being given that education, we've really been harmed, and we've not been able to make informed decisions. And there's times where there are people, they are a single parent, and they don't know about how to get natural supports into their lives, and they don't go to the prenatal appointments because they don't know how to get to them, or they don't know that they have to get to a prenatal appointment. And so a lot of the time medical professionals will call CPS and report them to CPS when they arrive in the delivery room and their baby is being born.
They just
And there's a
assume
lot of
that,
separation of
yeah.
children, and it's all based on a pre-assumption that we can't care for our children. And it's based on a presumption that we can't have, that there aren't supports in place. Well, if you help provide those supports, then there can be supports in place.
Right.
And so we really need to advocate to the child protective services that you can't just be ripping babies away from the mothers with intellectual disabilities. You should help put supports in place. You should work with the developmental disability agencies. You should work with the person's support system to help make it happen. You shouldn't base taking a child, separating a child based off an assumption, because you've already caused an ACE for that child. You've caused an adverse child experience by separating them from their mother. I was separated by my mother at birth, and I was institutionalized, and it was a horrible experience. And I don't think that that's the right way to go about things. I think we need to work with these parents and support them in raising their children. And if they need extra support, to get them those extra supports. Don't just
And yet
put more trauma.
it was state and federal policy for 170 years to take children away from parents without thought and without consideration. What's the effect of this?
The effect is, you have children that they're separated from their parents, and you have parents that feel like they can't, they don't even get a chance, and it causes depression, separation anxiety. It causes a lot of different things, and I do believe it causes trauma.
What's the effect on of this? Now, this is just, you are really on the vanguard here. This is still an active practice in Washington State. Is that correct?
Yes, so it's still happening in Washington State. I'm working with a peer right now that's dealing with, her child's been separated from her for 4 years, and they still can't even get custody. And it's absurd because, meeting this person, they're very responsible. They do need support. They do have support services. They have natural supports, but they're being denied based on assumptions, and people people being really disrespectful, in my view, to who she is as a person. And I think that it's a bureaucratic mess too. A lot of it's being blamed on bureaucracy, but I think a lot of it's being caused by prejudice.
Now these supports cost money, but the result of not providing these supports is that all of these children migrate into the foster care system. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that
They
costs.
get put into foster care. And there's a lot of evidence of foster care. There's been a lot of abuses in foster care. There's been a lot of neglect in foster care. These children would be a lot safer if you gave supports to the parents and allowed the parents to raise their own children, instead of, oh, we just gotta give them to foster care, give them to foster care. Foster care is not as stable as a family home. And these children, they should get to stay with their biological parents, even if the biological parents have disabilities. I know many parents that have disabilities that are amazing parents. And because they were given the dignity of risk, because they were given the respect, they were able to raise their children, and now they have grandchildren. So why isn't this the case for everyone? That's the problem. And I believe in all means all. We should all be given the right to keep our children. And the only time that that should be violated is if we actually have done something wrong, if we've actually neglected our child.
Right. The presumption
But
of
that
innocence.
isn't the case. That's
So-
not what's happening. You can't make that, you can't give that evidence in the delivery room, but they're trying to say they can.
How can we get providers to be more interested and involved in the families? It sounds like there's a lot of presumptions. How do you get them more involved and more thoughtful?
So we really need better education to providers. We really need to stomp that mental age theory. We really need to teach providers the harms that theory has done and how they can help combat it and say no to it. I mean, more, in trainings on that, we need training, and it needs to be led by people with intellectual disabilities. It needs to be led by the adults that have these experiences so that they see these are adult human beings, we're regular people just like you. We just need different supports than you do. We really need to also we really need to get rid of that red tape that prevents providers from caring for the children of disabled people. So there's some caregiving agencies that they'll give care to the person with IDD, but then they will not give care. They will not help the person help them parent their child. And it's because of this bureaucratic red tape that's in the way. And so we really need to try to unwind that red tape to make it so that care providers have more easier ways of supporting these parents as well.
Does that include CPS? How do we educate CPS better?
So we need to educate CPS that as long as we're given the right supports, we can parent our children, and that we're not as irresponsible as they think. We can be very responsible if we're given the right supports. And it brings more trauma to the child to separate us from our child than it is to allow us to keep our child, and maybe we make some mistakes, just like any parent makes mistakes. But that child is not going to have the horrible memory of being separated from their parent. And so we really need to reframe to CPS what they're really doing, because they try to claim that they're separating the child because they want to prevent ACEs. Well, you're causing an ACE by separating. The separation causes the ACE in itself. And so you're doing exactly against what you're saying you want to do by doing that. I think that separation should be the very, very last scenario, and it should never be done in a delivery room. That disrespects due process. That takes away due process.
Ivanova, you're an amazing advocate here and really have a great story to tell. But clearly you got a lot of help and early on in your life. Can you tell us a little bit about your early years?
So my early years, I was nonverbal till I was 5.5. I had a lot of self-injurious struggles. I had a hard time understanding the world. The world had a hard time understanding me. I had a lot of emotional deregulation issues. I couldn't read until I was in the 4th grade, and my mother, she had to teach me how to read herself because the school didn't think they could teach me. And so she had to teach me how to read, and that was a challenge for her. I don't blame her, but she was able to pull it off, and I learned how to read and write. And But it was a fight, and it was hard to figure out it was hard to figure out the social world too. A lot of kids, they would, throw balls at my head, and they would call me the R word. R word stands for retarded, that word. They There were a lot, and I remember that it was hard for my family even to deal with my disabilities, because the adoption agency and the orphanage, they told them different things, and I think it confused my parents, and so they thought my disability could go away,
Oh,
and that not the case. It doesn't go away.
surprise.
And that was hard for them to accept in my teen years, because they were expecting that I would thought to be normal in my teen years,
Just
and
grow out of this?
yeah, grow out of this, and it just never happened.
No.
And so that was hard for them. And so, but I also, I overcame a lot. I was actually able to gain some academic abilities, and I've went to Central Washington University, and I learned about the American eugenics movement, and I learned about how people like me back in the early 20th century, we were put in institutions and sterilized against our will, not being allowed to have children. And they used mental age theory, and they used racism and ableism and all the different isms to justify it, and it's just really awful. And I was like, this, I gotta keep teaching, I gotta keep speaking about this, because I know that there are ways that this is happening now. There are ways people are being sterilized, like the Ashley X treatment. I don't know if you've heard about that, but that's a young woman with a severe form of cerebral palsy that they got put on a treatment that stunted their growth. This
Oh,
was back in 2006,
right.
but still, it was in the 2000s.
And the
But
fear was that she would be molested if they didn't
yeah,
basically stop her from ever becoming an adult.
mm-hmm.
I see.
And it basically did not allow her to grow up. And I think that's a huge problem, because we don't know if she consented to that. If she consented, but we don't know that, and she did not consent to it. And so I see that as a form of sterilization,
So,
that type of treatment.
Ivanova, you're really the sort of the first wave of IDD folk who are becoming advocates and involved in public policy conversations. Tell me a little bit, as we're closing up, about your work through the University of Washington as an advocate. What are you doing professionally?
So as a professional, I am an activist advocate. I do legislative advocacy for the LEND specifically. The LEND stands for Leadership, Education, and Neurodevelopmental Disabilities. And that program is a training program for medical professionals and other stakeholders on what are the best practices in supporting families and their loved ones with IDD. And I educate a lot about ending mental age theory, and that I'm very passionate about it, and they all know it, and they're really supportive of me. Actually, my faculty has been very supportive, and even through my pregnancy, they threw me a little baby shower. And I do a lot of national advocacy work throughout the land. I've gone to the AUCD conference. I've gone to national conferences. I've spoken at different. I did some uh, faculty work in Georgia, actually, for their self-advocacy cohorts around how to be on a board and learning professional etiquette and things like that. And that was a lot of fun that I got to do through the land. And I helped build curriculums for the trainees. And I also helped mentor and recruit new self-advocate trainees. So back in 2014, I was the first self-advocate trainee. And then I became faculty in 2016. And I've been faculty ever since. And I recruit all the new other self advocates into the program and help people fill out the applications. And I'm the faculty mentor, and so I debrief with them after the core seminars, and I also help them with the leadership projects.
That's fantastic work. Are you meeting other advocates like you out there?
Yes, so I work with a lot of great advocates, Anthony Nass, Mike Raymond, who is our president of People First of Washington. And Anthony is the web coordinator for our for our SAIL group. I'm also chair of Self Advocates and Leadership SAIL, and so I work with a lot of different folks with IDD in SAIL, and we work together on legislative policy issues. We're actually right now in the middle of a complaint with the Northwest Hospital Network because they have been talking about rationing care and denying care to people with disabilities. And you cannot use rationing as an excuse to discriminate. And so SAIL, Self Advocates and Leadership, and myself and many others are part of a complaint lawsuit, a complaint suit against those hospitals saying you can't discriminate. And the HHS has come out in support of us, saying, no, that's not in the right. You can't discriminate based on disability or age. And so, well, those are some of the things that we've been working on, and we're very passionate about those issues. And many of our members, there are different levels. We're all different levels of support needs. There's
You'll
some
send
people
us
that
some
need a lot of
information.
supports, and others that they don't need as many supports.
You'll send us some information about that action, and we can link that below this video so our attendees can learn more about that.
Sure.
Ivanova, it's been great to talk to you. I'm very proud of you. I'm very encouraged to know that you're out there working.
Yep, I'm working hard.
Okay. Stay in touch and stay well.
All right, no problem. Thank you. You stay well as well.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.